Hi everyone, my name is Amanda. My 2-year-old has 16p11.2 deletion syndrome, which is why I'm part of this community. And in my spare time, when I'm not home with my kids, I work as an occupational therapist in my province's early intervention program. I'm based out of Ontario, Canada. Virtual therapy, which is I think kind of the norm right now in our crazy times, it doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't work for every therapist, for every skill set, for every child. And so I think feel free to share that with your therapist. And if it's not something that's working for you, to dialogue about other ways, maybe connecting over the phone or via email, whatever works for you. I think it's specifically helpful at times like this where there's a lot of stress and change, is to really think about how important building new skills are versus maintaining your program. And for us right now, we are not actively working on any new skills. It's a really tough time, and it's hard to learn new skills when it's stressful. So, and we know that there's actually research to support that it's hard to do that. So for us, we're focusing just on maintaining the skills that we have, and when things kind of settle down a little bit and we're able to get back to some of our therapies, we'll then work on building some of those skills again that we were working on. One of the things I thought about as a parent, what is really helpful to me? I have worked with a lot of therapists. So not only am I a therapist, but I have had the opportunity with my son to work with a large number of therapists across a bunch of different specialties. And I realized pretty quickly some of the things that were really important to me and really helped make that relationship work better. So a few of those things are really thinking about what was it that I'm hoping to achieve with this therapy. So often we go and we think the therapist is the expert, and it's really not the case. You are the expert on your child, and the therapist for sure is expert on certain skills, but you're a team working together for your child, and you always have the best information about your child, and you always know what they need, much more so than the therapist. So it's to take it away from that expert model. Don't think of the therapist as the expert. Think of it as a team of you working together and really figuring out what you're hoping to achieve from that particular therapy. And taking it even a step further, I found it was really helpful for me to walk in the door of that session, or if the therapist is coming to your home, when they come in the door and say, my biggest concern today is, and then start with that. Because it's so easy to fall into the trap of waiting till the very end of your session when the therapist says, do you have any questions about anything? And then you say the thing that you are actually the most worried about, and then you don't actually have very much time to address that concern. So really focusing right at the beginning about the thing that you want to talk about. It's your session for your child. It doesn't really matter what the therapist wants to work on. It's really for you. You're not expected to be the therapist. So again, just, you don't have to say, I want to work on this skill. You can say, I'm having this problem. Can you help me figure out how to work on that? And your therapist will be able to kind of work with you again, that team relationship. Really helpful for me is making sure that I kind of share my team with all my therapists. So it's really hard when you have like 5 different people that you're working with, and all of them give you what they think is a really reasonable program of 5 activities. And then you go home and realize you have 25 activities that you're supposed to be doing every single day. So really sharing that, you know, I'm working with all these people. These are the kinds of things they're giving me to do. Is there anything that you could, you know, kind of work together on? Or maybe realistically, I can only do one thing from each of you. What is the most important thing? So just being really honest with people about kind of what else is going on in your life. And that is a big piece. If you're doing a lot of different therapies. In terms of my big kind of tips and tricks, as a parent, it was really interesting because, you know, I worked as a therapist. I've given people programs for a long time. And then as coming at it from the other side, I realized, wow, this is really a lot of work. And children are just a lot of work generally. So just doing just the everyday things you have to do is actually a lot of work. And then adding extra just sometimes just seems really insurmountable. So I kind of came up with a couple of things that have worked for me really well. And one is the idea of living therapy. So just dialoguing with my therapist and saying, these are the activities we do every day. And can you find a way to put in the things you would like us to work on, the things that are working towards our goals in our day-to-day activities. And then it doesn't feel, I don't have to set aside a time. I don't have to set aside half an hour to work on exercises. I'm just going to do our regular daily thing and incorporate those in. So one of the examples I have of living therapy that we do at home is we're working on balance a lot, standing balance. We have lots of falls right now. So rather than doing exercises for standing, we are working on things like standing on one foot when we put on and off our pants. And there's lots of opportunities in the day to take on and off your pants, getting dressed in the morning and having a bath and then getting ready for bed. So that is one of the ways that we're practicing one of our therapy goals. And it's just something I have to do it anyways. Another thing that I have really found helpful, and I did last summer, a lot of it, was to ask my therapist for their bang for their buck exercises. So what is the exercise that makes the most difference for my child? So if I'm only going to do one thing, it's the most important thing. And so, for example, our physiotherapist last year said he really, really, really needs to work on his big buttock muscles. Those are the things that are preventing him from really being stable. So she said squats. If I was to tell you one thing, squats. Two things would be squats and climbing. So I was like, okay, great. We are going to do squats and climbing. So really focusing on the really core components that are going to give me the most benefit. Sure, there was lots of other things we could have been doing, but really these were the things that were, for example, going to get us 80% to our goal of being more stable in walking. The last thing that I have found helpful, and I made this little chart for my son, and I'll just show you an example. It doesn't really matter what's on it, just like a little spreadsheet that I made on Word, a little table, nothing fancy. And some people, you could do it by hand, whatever works for you. Or I know some people really get fancy and like to do like bullet journaling and stuff like that, and whatever works for you. And what I use this chart for is for all those great tips that your therapist gives you that are just taking up space in your head. There are things that I'm not actively working on maybe right now, but they're things that I thought were really useful or helpful. And they're just kicking around in my head and taking up that space. And it just feels like it's always something in there. And I found it really helpful to write those down. And then if we do happen to achieve a goal and want to work on something else, then I can just pick from my list of tips on my chart, and I update that every month. It takes me just a few minutes. I update it, and I really found it freed up that mental space that I was allocating for those ideas, which is really draining. I think that just constantly trying to remember all of those things is actually just takes up a lot of effort. And so just kind of getting that out of my head was really helpful. What has worked for me as a parent during this time is to try to keep some semblance of a routine. And that doesn't look the same necessarily as our routine day-to-day that we had prior to this pandemic, when we were doing school and work and daycare, but now we do have a little bit of a daily routine. We're trying to get some daily exercise, and it's more challenging because we can't get out to all the parks or all the things we used to do, all the play groups and the classes, but even just in our house, we're doing some Go Noodle, cosmic yoga, obstacle courses, just whatever you can fit in your daily routine in house. You can hear my kids practicing some of their exercises right now, running around in the house. I'm trying to minimize any additional stressors, like really giving ourselves a little bit of a break. Trying to find some fun activities every day to have family time. Hi again, everyone. So just, and I don't mean like planning a big special thing, like going on Pinterest and making it really fancy. I mean, just like fun little activities. If your kids like board games or puzzles, just something fun that you can do together. And it may only be 5 minutes, and that's totally fine too. It's not supposed to be something that causes extra pressure, just something that naturally arises that's fun for your family. and obviously trying as much as possible to eat healthy and to get some sleep. That's always an ongoing goal for me. My kids like to wake up really, really early, but I try my very best to get some sleep because everything always seems a bit better when we're all more rested. Try not to be so hard on yourselves, and I think as parents we're just hard on ourselves generally speaking, and I think when your child has additional challenges or struggles, it's just amplified. You want your child to be successful, you want to do the best you can for them, and those are really admirable goals, but it doesn't mean that you have to be your child's therapist. It doesn't mean that you have to work 100% of the time. It doesn't mean that every opportunity has to be a learning opportunity. Things can just be fun, things can just be play, they can be family time. Those are equally as important goals. I know for my son, and for a lot of kids, therapy is kind of almost like a marathon. It's going to be something you may cycle in and out of over a lifetime when needs arise. So it's not like a sprint to the finish line. And so what I really, if you can only take away one thing from this whole discussion today, is that you are good enough as a person, you are good enough as a parent. It doesn't matter what your child does or doesn't do, but you are good enough. And if your child does it differently, or it takes them longer, or if they never do it, because that's the reality, sometimes a child never attains a skill, that's okay. And it's not a reflection on you as a person. You are worthy just as you are. So please give yourself a lot of grace.